Hi, I'm Alex Jardine, one of the travel specialists here at Aardvark McLeod, and today we're going to talk about the fly fishing in Cuba and in particular Jardines de la Reina. So before I get into too much detail about Jardines de la Reina, please do chip in and ask any questions as we go along, and I'd be happy to answer them. A little bit of background about Cuba itself. It's located in the Caribbean. It's the largest island in the area, stretching some 800 miles in length. It's a very narrow island with world-class fisheries both to the north and south of the landmass. So to the north, there's famous fisheries such as Cayo Romano Cruz, Cayo Paradon and Cayo Santa Maria. So they specialize more in big bonefish, permit feeding on raids, and Cayo Santa Maria, which is also referred to as Gardens of the King, is the premier kind of migratory tarpon fishery in Cuba. And those north coast locations are land-based, so you stay in hotels and then you head out by boat each day. Whereas on the south coast, things are a little bit different in that all of the operations are liverboard based. So you're based on a large yacht, and then you go out and stay in the centre of specific fishing locations. These include the Isle of Youth, which again is another famous tarpon destination, primarily for juvenile tarpon, but during the migration season you can target big tarpon. Then you've got the Pata and the kind of Las Salinas fisheries, so that's closer to the mainland. This is a really good kind of mixed species destination, bonefish, permit, tarpon, some snook as well. And then kind of slightly further east to the Isle of Youth, you've got Cayo Largo, which is again one of the kind of famous grandstand destinations for permit, bonefish and tarpon. And during certain times of the year, the Isle of Youth and Cayo Largo are combined as one fishery, which is referred to as Canarios, which is the name of the whole archipelago in that area. And then that slightly further east on the south coast, you've got probably Cuba's most famous destination, which is Jardines de la Reina. That's the one that really kind of put the saltwater fishing in that area on the map. Absolutely beautiful, fantastic for permit, bonefish, but also tarpon and both a mix of juveniles and migratory fish. But I'm not going to go into too much detail yet. We'll come back to that later. So actually, before you go to Cuba, how do you get there? So for us from the UK, there's a couple of different routes that you can take. One is via European hubs such as Paris on Air or Madrid on Air Europa. They're both really good connections and they'll get you into Havana. Otherwise, it's also possible to go in via Canada, so fly into Montreal, Toronto, and then take a direct flight from there down to Cayo Coco on the north coast. Again, a really good route and particularly good if you want less internal travel time once you're in Cuba. So Cayo Coco is better located for some of the north coast fisheries, but it's also only 2 hours drive away from Jardines de la Reina. So a really good option, particularly if you've done Havana and you're happy to skip that out. So one of the joys about traveling to Cuba is not just the fishing locations, but the country itself. So going into Havana is an experience in itself. Perhaps not as wonderful an experience now as it might have been 10, 15 years ago. Just due to a few issues internally with the country. There's a lot of poverty going on, so you're hassled a bit more for money, but actually the experience is still there. Lots of live music, lots of cultural sites to visit, amazing architecture. So for anyone who's not been, Havana is a very special place to visit and well worth the time to stop and see. If you're traveling from the US, yes, you can go. So that's a big tick. It's very easy. There's lots of direct flights from the US, notably into Santa Maria, which is, or Santa Clara, sorry, which is in the center of Cuba. But there are also flights into Havana, so that's very doable as well. An important change in the last 18 months is Cuba has moved away from a paper tourist card, and it now has an electronic visa. This is very similar to anyone who's applied for a Canadian ETA or a US ESTA. You simply go online, fill out a few simple questions, select your reason for visiting, pay a small fee, and that will give you a sort of visa to enter Cuba. All very straightforward and works well when you arrive. We should recommend that you print a hard copy because Cuba isn't always the most reliant on virtual copies. For those who are not US or Canadian citizens, one important thing is anyone who travels to Cuba since 2021 does now require getting a full US visa in order to travel to the US or via the US in future, including if you decide to route your travel via the US. It's a slightly frustrating process, but it is a straightforward one. But it does require going to a physical US embassy, which is time consuming. It takes about half a day in order to do the queuing, the interviews, and then a week to 10 days while they process your passport and send it back to you. But actually the process is very straightforward, and once it's done, the US visa is valid for a 10-year period. That aside, one of the other big things for traveling to Cuba is communication once you're in country, with kind of poor cell service and poor connectivity across Cuba. It's worth knowing that in some parts you will be out of contact. If you're on the North Coast or in hotels, you will have access to Wi-Fi and probably some form of cell mobile service in order to receive text messages or do sort of a fairly low-grade internet chats. You might be able to do Wi-Fi calling, but video calling might struggle on some networks, and then the usual kind of, if you're planning on streaming films, that type of thing, it's going to be hard. But if you're on any of the liveaboards in the south, you need to basically plan to be offline for the duration that you're down there. There's no Wi-Fi coverage. You will have some form of mobile coverage around the main ports before you leave. But once you're away from land, you're essentially out of contact, apart from in the case of an emergency where you can contact through the captain's deck. So another big thing, aside from the communication, is money when you're in Cuba. For many years, US dollars was an absolute no-go, and you could only spend money using euros, pounds, Canadian dollars, cash. Whereas in recent years, the US dollar has become the kind of primary currency to use. So it's almost better just taking US dollars if you're planning to go. So tips, eating out in Havana, drink, just general spending money is tips, is US dollars, and make sure that you've got some small notes, plenty of $1 bills if you can get them, because generally as you're moving around, tips for porters, waitresses, and so on, it's useful to have those small banknotes. Also, any banknotes that you do carry, make sure that they don't have any tears or damage to them, as these will be quite often refused because they want good quality notes. When you are spending money, if you're spending money in sort of main hotel resorts, you may be required to get a local prepayment card. Quite often in the locations where this is done, they're sold. And you essentially get a card and you load it with dollars, and then you can spend it in the souvenir shops at hotel resorts and that type of thing. Otherwise, spending money kind of around Havana in the hotels and sort of government-run establishments, like main supermarket shops, pharmacies, that type of thing. You can use credit cards. It might be that some US credit cards won't be accepted, or if you've got sort of more currency cards like Revolut, they also won't be accepted because of their US ties. So actually taking you to the location, so in Jardines de la Reina, you stay amongst several liverboards. At the moment, there's about 4 liverboards that run in the operation, but as we move into 2026, that will be reduced to 2 to reduce the pressure, which is a fantastic move. It will see the area kind of be made more special for a select amount of people. The liverboards are, whilst they've been running for a good number of years, they're maintained well. They're kept to a reasonable standard. They're clean, they're comfortable, they're very spacious. So on one of my trips, we were aboard with 24 anglers, and you never felt crammed in or like you couldn't get away and have a quiet space away from people. So they're really well done. Lots of communal areas, whether you want a quiet sun deck or you want to go and hide on the main deck away from people to read a book. So there are places to be social, but there's also places that you can kind of hide away and have a bit of time to yourself. The crew and staff aboard the vessels are fantastic. They do a wonderful job of looking after you during the week, and they keep you well fed. The food is good on the boats. It's slightly less good when you're in the hotels, just because of how things are stocked. But definitely aboard the liverboards, you end up with really good seafood throughout, good fresh produce, and the chefs do a fantastic job of mixing up the menu during the week. The drinks always flow well. They're always cold, always well served. So that's great. And on the Jardines de la Reina trips, it's an open bar throughout. So if you ever just fancy a drink, you can help yourself, or if someone's around, they'll happily come and help serve you a drink. The sleeping arrangements, a lot of the boats have a mixture of cabins that can be taken on single occupancy, but also those that can be taken shared. So you have the option to pay a bit extra if you prefer a single cabin. But if you're 2 friends, father and son, who are quite happy sharing a cabin with separate beds, that option's also available. From a guiding point of view, they all operate dolphin skiffs, which are fantastic for moving around the fishing areas, and these are kept near the boat, so every morning you're ready to go. The season at Jardines de la Reina is year-round, so really you can fish any week of the season and have wonderful fishing. Being in the Caribbean, you do have peak hurricane season, which really runs from the tail end of June through to early November. And kind of peak hurricane season would be September, October time. So personally, it's a time I like to avoid. But that being said, quite often you get really good tarpon and permit fishing within those date windows. So they shouldn't be written off in their entirety. For those who want to target the big migratory tarpon, they do come to the flats at JDR, and that's typically from mid-March to mid-June, with the prime time being around that kind of May full moon. So anyone planning to target those should be looking anywhere from mid-March to mid-June. But if you're just fancying targeting the resident tarpon, the fantastic permit and bonefish there, then any week of the year has the possibility to give you a good chance of catching all of those. So the fishing days can be quite long, and you've got the option to extend it if you want. But usually you're on the water for about 7:30 in the morning, straight after breakfast, and you return to the boat at 4:30 in the evening with lunch taken on the water. So in that time, you've got a really good chance to explore open ocean flats, sort of nice marley turtlecrass flats on the inside of the mangroves. There's mangrove lagoons, channels. There's some hard coral flats that are really good for spotting permit. So you've got a really good environment for searching of lots of different species of fish. But you also have the reef edge if you want to go and try something a bit different and trying to catch some jacks, some cuda. There's some really good spots for that. And at certain times of the year, you can also see whale sharks out there, lots of sort of various forms of stingray, turtles, shark. There's a lot going on in the area. So setting up for a week at JDR. For most weeks outside of migratory tarpon season, you're looking at 3 rods, which would be an 8, even a 7 weight, but I prefer an 8 weight here, partly because of the size of the fish, but also there will always be a bit of wind around. So an 8 weight for the bonefish, which typically average about 3 to 4 pounds. Leader wise, you're probably looking at about a 16-pound leader. You can drop it down if you've got really low tides to 12, 14 pounds, but generally 16 is fine. And then flies, really just a Cuban shrimp. You will want some variety, but for the mainstay, you will be fishing just simple spawning shrimp pattern. Then for the permit, a 9 or a 10 weight. My personal preference is to go for a 9 weight, so you get the presentation. But again, with that wind around, you might want to go up to a 10 weight. These are all floating lines, by the way. So a 9 weight, and then a bit of a variety of flies. So it always used to be that the Avalon permit fly was the Avalon shrimp was the fly to have. But actually a lot of these permits, I've seen a lot of them. So having a bit of variety, so different shrimp patterns, some flexo crabs, some sort of raghead crabs, just a bit of variety so you can try different patterns if the permit are being difficult, which we know they can be. And then for the sort of resident tarpon, again, a 9 or a 10 weight is perfect. Most of the time you don't need long casts for them, and you're typically fishing maybe size 1 to 2 flies, going up to 1.0. So you're not fishing big heavy flies, and you're not fighting a big fish. You're going up to about 30 pounds. So a 9 or a 10 weight has plenty of strength for that. But if you're there in migratory season, you could go with those 3 setups, or just an 8 and a 9, 10, and then add in your migratory tarpon rod, which would be an 11 or a 12 weight. That's partly for its fighting capabilities, but then also you might be scaling up in fly size, and you might be adding in a sink tip style line just to cover you in different areas of the fishery. So those three to 4 setups would cover you throughout the season. Flies for tarpon, lots of the standards, tarpon toads, tarpon bunnies, black and red, chartrons, just a bit of variety for each day. It might be one day you encounter a lot of sardines that are being pushed in by the wind and are being held in an area, so you want to go quite pale in your fly selection, or sort of silver white pattern or tan. But it could be an overcast day. It may be some slightly tannin stained water outside the mangroves, where you want to then be looking at black and red or black and purple, just to have a bit more of a profile. So variety is key, and just giving yourself that option. One thing I would say, so Jardines de la Reina is a fantastic destination, particularly those who want to target all three species with a good chance of catching all three in the same day. They are all there, and you'll have good shots at them most days. Thank you for joining. Please do add any questions if you've got any. But if you're joining this late, or you're coming in at a later date and you've got a question, please do drop me an email. Personally, I'll be leading a group back there in November, which I'm really excited to do. A chance to right a few wrongs and a broken off permit on my last trip. There's a couple of spaces available, so please do get in touch, ask your questions, and if we can fish together, it will be fantastic. Thank you.